All right, we are up on those market developments, Shep, but in the meantime, the timeline that has turned everything you know about the Las Vegas shooting upside down. Even today in Las Vegas, they're wondering, how could we have gotten this so wrong, the order of events so wrong, that now calls into question the exact time and place which Stephen Paddock started shooting. Now, it wasn't too long ago when the thought seemed to be that a security officer who was shot on site at the scene on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel had precipitated a collision with authorities dealing with the shooter after all the shooting had gone down. Now, as it turns out, mere minutes before. To Dan Springer in Las Vegas on the fallout from all of this. Dan.
Yeah, Neil, based on this new timeline, it had to be very clear to the gunman that he had no chance to escape before he fired even the very first shot, because it wasn't down into the crowd outside the Mandalay Bay. It was inside his room, through his door, out into the hallway. That security guard was Jesus Campos. It happened to be on this 32nd floor checking on an open door alarm. It was not related to the shooting. Campos, on the surveillance cameras that he had set up, Stephen Paddock fired some 200 rounds through the door at him. 6 minutes later, he opened fire on the crowd of 22,000 country music fans. That shooting lasted 11 minutes. At the time, police didn't know if there were multiple gunmen or not, but they did know exactly where Paddock was and quickly had him boxed in. Meantime, police still have not found any evidence of an accomplice.
We have uncovered no evidence to show there was a second shooter. We have uncovered over 200 instances of the suspects traveling throughout Las Vegas, and he has never been seen with anyone else.
Now, this video we just shot today, it shows the FBI agents who are inside the crime scene still working the case, still taking pictures of the evidence. A big development late yesterday. Police now say that there was not a single event in Paddock's life that triggered this shooting rampage. Police say they won't stop until they have a motive or at least an explanation for why this happened. The victims and their families want to know, of course. Public support for them grows. The GoFundMe page set up by a county councilman is up to $10.4 million with a goal of $15 million. Also, Caesars Entertainment has pledged to raise $2 million from entertainers and celebrity chefs for the victims. Neil, 50 people are still hospitalized and 25 of them are still in critical condition. Neil?
Dan Springer, thank you very, very much. So the impact on the investigation is what right now? This revelation here that the security guard was not even at this or doing anything, responding to this until, well, it was before all of this. Precipitating minutes later, the shooting itself. Former FBI Assistant Director Ron Hotzko. Ron, just what you're learning now, it does change the dynamics of this and whether that precipitated Paddock to start sooner rather than later with his shooting. It is, I imagine, turn this all upside down. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I suspect so, Neil. First, I think it's worth saying, at least my own opinion, is that the sheriff is really doing a tremendous job in getting information out to the media. I'm sure they are doing their best to make sure it's accurate information. I can't tell you how many cases I've been involved with in my own career where you're trying to match up clocks and watches and timepieces that don't match up, and you're trying to get it right. I'm sure he's trying to get it right, but it does look like this encounter with the security officer was now potentially the precipitating event, maybe triggering the killer to begin his fire before he was fully ready. We'll perhaps never know if it would have made the event more or less deadly, but maybe it was the precipitating event rather than the ending event.
It's hard to say in retrospect, and easy for certainly myself or anyone in the media to sort of second guess what happened here, but it does raise questions to your point whether Paddock began this carnage sooner than he normally would have, and also in the case of Jesus Campos, the security guard in question, how soon he notified security personnel at the Mandalay Bay Hotel, and we're getting different reports on that. Let's assume they got a heads up almost immediately. After all, the guy was shot in the leg after being 200 bullets were fired. He's injured, he's bleeding. What would normally the procedure be? They would notify police? What would happen?
Sure, they would put in a call to, presumably to 911. It would go to a call taker, potentially then to a dispatcher. both of whom, at least the call takers, trying to assess and understand exactly what it is that is on the phone. And so there's going to be the passage of some time before that information gets relayed to a beat car, a patrol car, to go respond to it, or multiple patrol cars. And my guess is that by that time, the shots are now being fired, or at least within moments thereafter. And now, and Neil, you and I have talked about this many times, you know, kind of the chaos of the first minutes and even hours of one of these active shooter incidents. Now you have all kinds of calls coming in with tremendous casualties, people trying to get out of the scene while police are trying to get to the scene. So you have, you know, kind of chaos. Yeah. And you would expect that that is going to slow the police response to the exact right location.
Do you think that this surprise or getting the encounter with the security guard changed Paddock's plans in terms of surviving this, that he had a getaway plan, that had the security guard not interfered, he would have gone through with a shooting that would have allowed him time, at least in his mind, to get away? I mean, his car was loaded with all sorts of stuff, from fertilizer compounds to bomb-making compounds to 1,600 rounds of ammunition. It seemed like the actions of a guy who was intent on getting out.
You know, I've heard those reports, the tannerite, the ammonium nitrate in the car, the additional weapons at the house. Right. So it seems like maybe he had something else afoot, maybe not bigger. But, you know, when he brought this many weapons and this much ammunition to that room, a room that was associated with him, whether he checked in under the girlfriend's name, his own name, he was a known to the Mandalay Bay. So his plan, his getaway plan, seemed to me to be foiled or failed from the start. I just don't see a bigger getaway, maybe a getaway for a few blocks or a few miles or a few minutes. But I don't know how he's going to, with this much firepower, he's not going to shoot his way out of that hotel unless police really act poorly, where they're getting in an encounter where they should be hunkered down behind walls themselves. Look, these are very powerful weapons, certainly capable of shooting and killing police with body armor, with helmets on, because of so much exposed area. And I think the police did the right thing here by mustering additional forces, 8 officers in one stairwell, 8 coming up another stairwell. You need the right forces to try to take on someone like this who's bunkered in.
All right, Ron, thank you very much. Ron Hoscott, former FBI assistant director on these fast-moving developments. The obvious question then becomes, does this provide ample fodder now for lawyers who can see lawsuit potential here? Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Anna Napolitano. You know, Judge, you and I have often talked about situations like these that change on a dime, or at least the circumstances behind them, and then lawyers can leap on that and say, aha, there was an opportunity to potentially prevent this. Whether that's true or not, how does this change that dynamic?
Well, this should put Mandalay Bay, its parent corporation, and their insurers on notice that they are now a principal target for failing to stop this or detect it or report it in time. I mean, the news here is not that he was shot. The news is not that he was shot ahead of time. The news is that an agent of the hotel, who should have been carrying with him a recording device, a device which would have allowed the head of security or somebody in security to listen in, was shot at 200 times by an automatic weapon. So Mandalay Bay knew of the existence and presence and workability of the automatic weapon 6 minutes before he started killing people. That should have triggered an enormous response, or at least this is the argument that that the lawyers will make to a jury if it gets to a jury, long before, or at least 6 minutes before he started the killing. What was the security guard's training? What did he do? To whom did he report? Who overheard besides him the 200 rounds? The weapons that this guy Paddock had would have admitted 200 rounds in less than a minute. That would tell an educated listener immediately, this is an automatic weapon that's illegal, it's profoundly destructive, and a guy on the 32nd floor has it. What are we going to do about it?
So if you're the Mandalay Bay Hotel, you're an institution where there's heavy security. Certainly for most casinos, it's in the casino. But now, of course, they're going to start digging into the timeline behind not only when this Jesus Campos, the security officer, was shot, but how quickly he notified security personnel there, and then how they would, according to Ron Hosko, the FBI fellow was just on, notify police, right? That sequence will be crucial.
Right. I mean, I like Ron Hosko, tip my hat to the police, particularly Sheriff Lombardo, who's been extremely transparent, sensitive to constitutional issues, and rational in what he's explained. But I do not tip my hat to the hotel, because now we need to know, what did they learn, when did they learn it, and what did they do about what they learned? Whatever it was, it didn't get anybody to that room in time. Could they have done so? I don't know the answer to that, because we need to know more facts.
Yeah, and there's a lot about the sequence we don't know, Judge. To your earlier point about the earlier model had it presented at about 10:18, 10:20 when he was done shooting. Authorities had already descended on his room, were waiting it out to see if he was done, what he was going to do, and you know, when they did storm into the room a little bit more than an hour after that, he was dead. When he killed himself, we don't know. But again, that time in which he was able to kill as many people and then sitting it out, waiting it out, whatever was going on, that's something that lawyers would want to know as well, right?
Of course. Add to this the fact that there are security cameras in that building, and it showed every time he came into that room. Did it pique anybody's curiosity that in the days he was in that room, he managed to bring 20 heavy automatic weapons and thousands of rounds of ammunition into that room? Did he do anything that ought to have tipped them off as to what he was accumulating in there? And why didn't any maids or any hotel personnel see anything in there that piqued curiosity, the curiosity of security?
All right, thank you very, very much. That's Andrew Napolitano. Real quick look at the markets. My friends, if any of this was weighing on markets, of course it wouldn't. As I stressed yesterday, none of this is even factored into the market's thinking here, maybe because terror and frightening incidents like this have become so common, or that this was not deemed an immediate threat. As I said, Wall Street continues its winning ways here on the Dow, of course, in record territory now, not that far from 23,000. In the meantime, we're following the controversies back and forth at ESPN and in the sports world. Now, the White House weighing in on, well, Jemele Hill's 2-week suspension from ESPN. Now, the issue here seems to be not only her push to try to have those who believe that the NFL players are being treated unfairly and those in the Dallas Cowboys are being treated unfairly when they're ordered to stand with the national anthem. Well, she suggested boycott advertisers. Well, of course, that is the same tack that many fans are taking with the NFL on what they deem to be a politically offensive view when it comes to kneeling to the national anthem. So what are they doing? Boycotting advertisers. You see a pattern? So does the commissioner of the NFL. More to this.
The markets are always moving.
We'll update you on these markets still soaring. Wall Street is into it. They like what they're hearing.
Washington is always changing.
These two sides are far apart. We'll get the read of what the president's thinking.
Neil's got it covered at noon on Cavuto Coast to Coast.
I've got the clarity you need from Washington to Wall Street.
When the clock strikes 12, get ready to get down to business. Join Neil weekdays on Cavuto Coast to Coast, only on Fox Business Network.
President Trump ripping ESPN anchor Jemele Hill suspended for 2 weeks after telling football fans to boycott Dallas Cowboys advertisers. The president tweeting, with Jemele Hill at the mic, it is no wonder ESPN ratings have tanked. In fact, tanked so badly, it is the talk of the industry. To the Hills, Joe Concha on all of this. Joe, she might have stepped on that third rail going after advertisers here, a sensitive issue certainly for her employer, but what do you think's going on here?
She stepped on it twice, Neil, to be honest with you.
Yeah, she did. You're right about that.
Right. So let's explain this to the viewers. Jemele Hill, essentially it was calling on fans to boycott advertisers of a team that exists in a league that ESPN pays $15 billion in broadcast rights fees for Monday Night Football. So now she's gone from being a host of SportsCenter, its flagship show at 6 p.m., to an activist. And that's not the job description, as you know, as a host yourself. And then it goes to even ludicrous speed because she doesn't realize that those same advertisers that she's saying should be boycotted also advertise on her 6 p.m. SportsCenter show. And I don't know if you heard this about television, Neil, but those those advertisers provide revenue. Revenue helps pay her paycheck. So she stepped on it twice, Neil, as you said.
But you know, it's interesting because there does seem to be a twin effort, albeit from different angles and sides, on going after advertisers or boycotts from average fans who themselves might be furious at the NFL for how this thing has become such a big problem, a big issue, a big distraction in the eyes of many. So they've been tempted to pick up on boycott causes that have been popping up everywhere, and now she for very different reasons. But it is a powerful weapon, isn't it?
It can be, if it's effective. I don't think it will be here. To be honest with you, I think she should have been suspended 2 weeks ago when she called a sitting president a white supremacist. And in these situations,
she wasn't
Neil,
suspended for that, right?
No, she was not. And even the tweets that she put up calling President Trump a white supremacist, they're still up. They weren't even deleted. She never apologized to him directly. And you can play a game in these situations, and I've done this in segments like this before. It's called PU, or Parallel Universe, where you say, could you imagine if a conservative said that about President Obama? And the thing is here, it's not even a hypothetical. We have precedent. Hank Williams Jr., employed by ESPN in 2011, stupidly compared President Obama to Hitler, and he was fired. Not suspended, but fired. Curt Schilling fired recently as well, a conservative who said some inappropriate things on Twitter in the eyes of ESPN. And here in this case, Jemele Hill gets suspended, and people are making this all about, some anyway, like an Al Sharpton, are making this about gender and race, and they're ignoring the precedent either willingly or because, you know, everything is seen through a race and gender prism in 2017, and that's just the narrative.
I'm just wondering where it all goes, because already you have this planned meeting next week with NFL owners, and you know, Commissioner Goodell has been saying we got to try to solve this. I've read his letter about 5 times. I still didn't understand it. I think he wants everyone to still stand for the national anthem. There he is with Jerry Jones, the Dallas Cowboys owner, but he wants the players' rights to air their grievances respected as well. It sounds to me like they haven't sorted this out still.
And I don't know how you do that, right? I mean, it still is a First Amendment right to express yourself. Now, granted, these are the owners. This is their stage. They own the stadiums. They're paying the players. They should be able to dictate how those things go on their stage. But when you start telling people when they can express themselves, then you're hitting another third rail in this situation. So I'm not sure if Roger Goodell really knows what to do here. But back to Jemele Hill for a second. You know, I invite all of your viewers out there to just engage in this little exercise. Why not go on social media right now and put up a post where you go after the clients and customers of the company that you work for and say you should boycott them, and then show that post to your boss and see what he or she does in that situation. You won't be suspended. You'll probably be walked out the building. So, for people saying that she shouldn't be suspended, just play out that scenario and see how that works out.
It doesn't make any difference to you that she tweeted this, she said none of this on air, or does it make no difference?
I think you represent your network, and you know this, Neil. I know you're not a big person that uses Twitter. I'm trying to use it less as well. It's a swamp. But you represent the network. It is 24/7. You represent that network. There are no personal and private anymore. You're Jemele Hill of ESPN always.
Okay. Well, I'm very up on this social media.
I've heard.
Facebook, all of that.
Didn't you listen to an 8-track on the way into work? Admit this.
That's fine.
I'm just saying.
Can we cut his mic now, guys? Joe Concha, thank you very, very much. Good seeing you.
Bye.
All right. Well, now the president is feuding with a United States senator. That's not new. The fact that he's outgoing, that's not too new. His tax cuts that could sort of hang on the line, well, that is new. We'll explain.
A major EPA decision, what it means for the economy and the country moving forward. EPA head Scott Pruitt gives Brett exclusive insight tonight, only on Special Report.
All right, there's been an aggressive back and forth in the Twitter universe and beyond between the President of the United States and outgoing Republican Tennessee Senator Bob Corker. Let's just say it's escalating, and let's just say a lot of Republicans are worrying about how this could disrupt, well, tax reform and all the things they hold near and dear. To Fox Business Network's Blake Berman at the White House on how all this is going down. What do you think, bud?
Hey there, Neil. Yes, this verbal sparring between President Trump and his Republican colleague, Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee, continuing on this day. It's been going now back and forth for a couple days now. The latest coming earlier this morning from the president's Twitter feed, in which he said the following, and I quote here, he said, "The failing New York Times set little Bob Corker up by recording his conversation, was made to sound a fool, and that's what I'm dealing with." Earlier today, though, the president was asked about this, and he made it very clear, Neil, that he thinks this will have no impact whatsoever on the issue of tax reform.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think we're well on our way. The people of this country want tax cuts. They want lower taxes.
At the